Yeah, welcome to another session. A session that I really wish to share what I do in my fictional world of existence, in literature, in fiction writing, in my writing journey of novels, plays, short stories, and poetry. To begin with, who is ELEGWAH'S? ELEGWAH'S is a storyteller shaped by history, silence, and the resilience conscience of society. ELEGWAH'S is a writer deeply invested in examining power, fear, memory, and moral consequences of human choices, particularly within post-colonial African spaces. My work is driven by a belief that fiction is not mere entertainment, but a mirror, a warning, and sometimes a quiet rebellion. I write to give language to what people rather consider, or to what is rather often considered as being suppressed, ignored, or feared. That is who ELEGWAH'S is. Inspiration of depth of silence. In today's session, we are going to focus on depth of silence. That's another fictional text. It's a novel. What is it all about? What inspired me in crafting all these great composition? Depth of silence. Why depth of silence? What inspired me? Depth of silence was inspired by the lived reality of societies where speaking the truth comes at a cost. I was moved by the way silence operates in our communities, not just as absence of sound, but as survival, fear, complicity, and resistance. The novel emerged from observing how corruption thrives where voices are muted, how power feeds on fear, and how ordinary people carry heavy moral burdens simply by choosing to remain quiet. It is a response to political betrayal, if I may say, social amnesia, and the quiet suffering of those who know the truth but are afraid to speak it. That's what inspired me in definitely coming up with this whole great literary creativity of Depth of Silence, the novel Depth of Silence. Why Depth of Silence? As a title, the title captures the paradox of the heart of the novel. Silence is not shallow. It has layers, weight, and consequences. In Kagia, silence protects lives, yet also murders justice. It shelters families, yet buries truth. The depth refers to how far silence reaches into the soul of individuals and conscience of a nation. It is both a refuge and a prison. The title reflects the emotional, political, and psychological abyss created when truth is suppressed. One could also ask, why does depth of silence remain a solid sensation to every avid reader? Reasons are simple: because it speaks to an experience many readers recognize but rarely articulate. The novel does not shout, it listens. Readers find themselves reflected in its characters. The fear of speaking, the guilt of compliance, the longing for courage. Its language is vivid. Its themes are universal. The universality speaks volume. Its themes are universal, for that matter, and its emotional resonance is deep. The story lingers because it does not offer easy heroes or simply villains. It interrogates conscience, forcing readers to ask themselves uncomfortable questions long after the final page. That's the reason as to why Depth of Silence remains a solid sensation to every other avid reader. One could also ask, maybe an embodiment of the synoptic flesh of the text, Depth of Silence. What's the summary of this text, Depth of Silence? Depth of Silence tells the story of Rigi, a deputy president in the fictional post-colonial state of Kagya, who is impeached after boldly speaking out against corruption, exploration, exploitation, and abuse of power under President Willie's regime. His refusal to remain silent leads to exile, betrayal, and persecution. As the nation descends into fear and repression, Rigi forms an alliance with reformists and ordinary citizens determined to reclaim truth and justice. Through political intrigue, personal sacrifice, and moral reckoning, the novel explores how silence can both destroy and preserve, culminating in a national awakening where the people rediscover their voice. It is a story of power, conscience, resistance, and rebirth. This is the summary of the story Depth of Silence, of the novel Depth of Silence. Of what relevance is Depth of Silence to Africa? How relevant is this text, Depth of Silence? How is it relevant to African continent? The novel mirrors Africa's most and post-independence struggles that over the years have been felt on the African soil. Betrayed dreams, authoritarian leadership, compromised institutions, and silenced populations. Kagya represents many African states where freedom exists on paper, but fear governs reality. Depth of Silence speaks to the continent's ongoing battle with corruption, political hypocrisy, and moral erosion. It also affirms Africa's resilience, reminding us that transformation begins when people reclaim their voices and confront fear collectively. That's the reason why you should indeed look for the text, advocate for the text, Depth of Silence, to the entire populace of the African people. This is the relevance of Depth of Silence to African continent. Why should everyone look for Depth of Silence and probably read it? Why should you really look for this text and read it? For what reasons? For what reasons? This is because it's not just a story, it is a conversation. The novel challenges readers to reflect on their role in society, when to speak, when silence is complicity, and when courage becomes necessary. It appeals to lovers of political fiction, social realism, and literary prose, offering both intellectual depth and emotional power. Anyone concerned with justice, leadership, and human dignity will find something deeply relevant within its pages. Of what relevance is Depth of Silence to Kenyan students and education sector? Of what relevance is this text, Depth of Silence, to Kenyan students and education sector? The novel speaks directly to Kenyan context, its politics, history, and social dynamics. While remaining universal for students, it sharpens critical thinking, ethical reasoning, and civic awareness. It provides rich material for analyzing themes such as governance, freedom of expression, loyalty, betrayal, and moral courage. Its sophisticated language and narrative structure also enhances literary appreciation and interpretive skills within the education sector. Why do you think Depth of Silence should be considered for ratified secondary schools' set book selection in literature? Depth of Silence meets both literary and educational standards. It is thematically rich, stylistically advanced, culturally relevant, and morally instructive without being preachy. The novel encourages debate, critical inquiry, and social awareness, key objectives of literature education. Its African setting, political relevance, and ethical depth make it an ideal text for nurturing informed, reflective, and socially conscious learners. That's the reason as to why this text, Depth of Silence, at some point it should be considered for ratification as a set text in the Kenyan curriculum. How can people out there get Depth of Silence novel? Depth of Silence is available through selected bookstores, academic distributors, direct author channels, reader schools. Institutions can access it through local bookshops, educational supplies, or by contacting the author or publisher. Directly for bulk and academic copies. Plans for wider regional and digital distribution are also underway to ensure the novel reaches a broader audience.